Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching World Talent. I'm Seyid, independent journalist, coming to you live from Montreal, Canada. And I'm going to talk with a great young leader, an American writer, educator, and he has gone through a very special experience that he will tell you later on. I want him to talk about himself. He's Daniel Carsten. Daniel Carsten from New York. Thank you so much and very welcome to the show. Hopefully that I have pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, Daniel, tell me about your great story. You have missed elementary school. You have done even an operation when you are only 4 days old, and you have gone through so many corrective surgery later on. And despite all of this pain, you are a hero. You end up as an educator and as a writer as well. Tell me from day 4, please.
Day 4, okay. So as I had told you, I was born with a hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So that's a congenital heart defect that I was, my parents found while my mom was pregnant with me. And on day 4, I had my first corrective surgery out of 3 surgeries. So there was 3 surgeries to correct it, and the first was the 4 days old. Then my second surgery, I was about 6 months old. And then my third surgery, I was 2 years old. When I was 2, though, when I was in the hospital, I was in the hospital for quite a while, I think about 6 or 8 weeks. And I was with a nurse in like one of the rooms, and she was suctioning my nose, and like something happened or whatever, and I had a massive nosebleed that led me into cardiac arrest. They had to rush me back into, I think I was in the ICU actually. I didn't go into any type of emergency room, or an operating room. And they had to cut me open right there and massage my heart back to revive me. So, that's kind of like the beginning of my story. Throughout, from age 2 to about 11, I lived a relatively normal life, but, things weren't completely normal. I still, the surgeries weren't corrective in the case of, okay, I'm fixed. It was more, you have some time, I bought some time, I still had this defect that was affecting me every single day. I was never able to play sports, or really even when I played tag with my friends, I would get super winded or sick, sometimes to a point where I really was just kind of out for the count. And when I was about 12, I was listed for a heart transplant. And with the heart transplant, I only waited about 6 months, and my health kind of was declining at that point. And I was in intermediate school, and in the middle of my 8th grade year, I got called for my heart transplant. And honestly, the day I woke up from my heart transplant, I really felt like a completely new person. Even, when my mom and my dad came into the room, throughout my whole life, since my circulatory system didn't work as well as everyone else's, I always had a little tinge of blue lips, and because the blood flow didn't flow as properly as it should have. And they could just tell immediately after my surgery that I looked like a healthy kid. So, my transplant, it was kind of crazy. I was really out of the hospital in 2 weeks, which is a pretty good time for most people. I feel relatively unheard of. And kind of got back to 8th grade as soon as I could. I really missed all my friends and stuff like that. I was on the Lego robotics team in my intermediate school, and I loved everyone that I went there with, and I just really couldn't wait to see everybody. They had come up to the hospital, and my mom had actually set up a website type of thing that people left me comments every day. Now I have a little book of comments that my friends and family and all these people from my church and things like that left me, and it's actually just kind of fun sometimes to look through. But so right after that, really my life changed kind of completely. I felt like a new kid. I was running around all the time doing everything I really could. And as that I was transplanted in February of 2009, so high school was right at that cusp, as soon as I got back, kind of. And the first thing I was talking to my parents about once the summer before high school was all right, I'm healthy. What sports team am I going to try out for? Because that's all I really ever wanted to do as a kid. I loved baseball growing up. I'm not too big into it now, but all I wanted to do ever was play baseball. And I played for a little bit with Little League, But as my health declined, it really wasn't able to play as much. And I also really wasn't that good. But I was like, all right, I'm going to try out for the baseball team. And my parents kind of like sat me down and were like, listen, you know, you're 13, 14 years old. You're probably not going to make the baseball team if you try out. There has been kids that have been playing baseball for the last 10 years of their lives. They're really good at it. You know, not that you're not good, but it's probably not going to work out for you like that. Like maybe you should try something else. So I had thought about track, but the idea of running all the time was not very appealing to me. So I actually joined the wrestling team from my high school, which, you know, as I told my doctors, they kind of were like astonished by it. But you know, I wrestled for 2 years in high school. I liked it enough. I wasn't that great at it, but again, kind of that curve of kids like really working out and doing things all their lives, and like me, my life kind of started when I got my transplant, you know. So I had to catch up a little bit. But
Okay, great. I like that catching up, especially despite all this pain. You are really a hero. Congratulations for being strong emotionally and psychologically and physically to go through all of this. And then you say, despite all of this, let me do what I want. And then you tried baseball, and then you tried track, and then you try even wrestling at high school. That's really brave.
yeah, thank you. You know, it was kind of funny. And I was like little. I was really little. You know, like I really hadn't hit any type of growth spurts or anything like that. So like, you know, maybe I was like 100 pounds at the time, and there was kids like I was at practice with that were like kind of like the 180s, 200s that like just for fun I would wrestle with them. I mean, I would never wrestle them in a match because they were way out of my weight class. But like even like practicing and stuff like that was so fun. But actually, when I wrestled, you know, I had always kind of had this like I'd call it like a mental block, because like I would feel like, you know, when I was like training for it or whatever, like you work out and now I realize it, but when you work out you get tired, obviously. But for me, like right after transplant, when I got like that feeling of me getting tired was like, oh no, I'm gonna be sick. So even though I was gonna be fine, I can never kind of push myself over the hurdle of like, oh no, like I'm pushing myself too hard. So I feel like that kind of held me back a little bit with wrestling, just because I would always like tell my coach like, oh, listen, I gotta sit down, like, you know, I don't feel good or whatever. But as I had kind of, you know, as I grew up and like I started to go to the gym a little bit more, I started to run, I started to like, you know, just work out like regularly. And I kind of realized that that feeling is a normal feeling for everybody. Like it wasn't just me who was experiencing it, but I always associated it with that bad feeling of like, oh, I'm going to be sick, I need to sit. So I feel like, you know, it kind of took me a while to get there. But even now, like I go to the gym, well, not right this second because of everything that's going on, but you know, in general, I was going to the gym like 3 days a week just to try to stay healthy, keep my heart healthy, things like that. So, you know, it really was kind of a big obstacle to kind of push through that feeling and kind of understand to myself that everything was going to be okay. I wasn't going to like pass out or like, you know, be sick and things like that, like, which has been, you know, a very helpful thing to finally learn.
Great, great. Thank you so much. I like the fact that you are so strong enough to go to the gym to keep healthy despite all of this mental block. And you have done great through the physical side, psychological side. Do you remember some of those support that you received from what I call the book of support or the book of comment when you were from the friend, from the community, the church, all your great people, your friend, your network, when you are in those difficult moments psychologically in terms of pain? What were, for example, were the most supporting line in that book of support, please?
Oh, you know, it's actually funny. You know, when I was like really young before my transplant, I had like a really great group of friends that I hung out with.
Yes.
And actually, there's one kid that I still talk to. I mean, we're men now, but you know, he was like just the most genuine guy ever. And when I was walking up the stairs in like my elementary school, and I'd be so winded or whatever, and he was like a, you know, a big athletic kid, whatever. Like even now, like he's a firefighter, he EMT, like always going to the gym, things like that. And like I remember him always being like, oh, we gotta wait for Danny, or like, oh, if you need, like, I can carry you up the stairs. Like, this is in school, like when we were, third or fourth grade, like offering to carry me up the stairs. So like even like, my friends have really been a big support of it. I think my friends always kind of didn't necessarily dance around the fact that I was different in a way, like everyone kind of understood, even when we were out like playing and things like that, like, he's got to take a break and that's okay. Like no one ever really gave me any kind of like stuff for it. Like it was always like a very understanding way about it. And like even my family has always been supportive. Everyone has always come up to the hospital with me, like especially during my transplant. They were all there for me. Like I think the only person I would say that was a little bit bitter about it was probably my little sister, because I had actually gotten my transplant 3 days before her 10th birthday. And to this day, I don't know why, she has this notion in her head that my parents were going to throw her a surprise 10th birthday party, even though there was no chance ever of that happening because I had been in the hospital a couple weeks before my transplant. So there was no planning of a 10th birthday party. But, I know that she was a little angry when I decided that day, I guess, that I felt healthy enough to walk down the hallway for some cake. It was like the first time I got up out of bed after my surgery. And like, she was kind of mad that, all the attention was on me being like, oh, hooray, he's walking, instead of her turning 10. But, even now, like, everyone really is so supportive. I always had like my aunt come to the hospital with me whenever we had visits. Like I was going to the hospital a lot right after surgery just to, make sure everything was okay, make sure I wasn't rejecting. Like my aunt was always coming. Like my grandmother has always been really great. So like my family really has been a huge support system. Like my cousins were always there for me, even like they're a lot older than me, like 10 years. So it's not a lot, but they were always like super concerned with what I was doing, or like if I was okay. And like even for them, like they were big baseball guys, and like they knew kind of like, I needed to take a break whenever we were kind of messing around in the yard.
Great. Thank you so much for this. Okay, I see that how great you are, and your personal determination and the support of your family and your community was a great backup for you to go beyond all of this and to overcome. Congratulations on that. Right now, let's talk about your writing project. I understand that you have written a short story too. What was the theme of that short story, and why? What was the motivating reason behind this writing, especially that you came through all of this exceptional journey?
It's funny. I feel like, this writing, I released something on Amazon recently. It's called The Hunter and the Dragon. And it's actually funny because I feel like this is kind of a way for me to kind of get away from all that when I write. And this particular story actually started out as a project for school. I had to write something in a writing class that I was in. And, it kind of just like, I really liked where it went with it. And I was like, I want to continue this. So, I think the first two things I had to do, like the first two, they're short stories, were for my assignments for classes that I'm taking. But then it kind of just sparked of like, oh, I love this idea. Let me keep going. And, I really have written it actually in the last couple of months. And it was a really good way to kind of pass the time during quarantine because of my situation with everything that has like, my heart. I actually had to like run away during quarantine because we weren't really sure exactly what was safe for me because I'm immune compromised. So me and my girlfriend went to my house down the beach where really nobody is during like March and April. And we kind of lived there for 3 months. And, during that time, I was working from home still, but I had a lot of time on my hands. And, I can understand that quarantine gets everyone a little crazy. So I kind of took a lot of my time during that, and I wrote these stories just to pass the time and try to, let myself away from the world and create a world where, things can happen the way I want them to, and not in the way of all the craziness that's kind of going on right now. So it really was kind of an escape. And
Great.
I think that that really was like the big kind of thing behind it. I mean, besides, the assignment.
That's great. Thank you so much for this. For example, let's remember the university days. For example, this creative writing class that you were in, for example, did that help you in writing fiction? Because they say in fiction, the rule is that there's no rule. It's just you have to follow your imagination. And I was thrilled by the idea that you use your writing to escape from that world of this challenging time of COVID time to create your own world where everything happens. So what is your real world that you want to create?
What do you mean by that? Like, what's my real world?
The world that you have created in your writing and your character and your short story where everything happened as you want or as imagination.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I mean, so it's a like a medieval fantasy world. I mean, my character is a bounty hunter,
Hmm.
and he becomes friends with a dragon. And,
Hmm.
I really like the dynamic that I created, or I'm trying to create with
Hmm.
those two characters, is really the basis of the story. I know the world is kind of like they're fighting some monsters and stuff like that. They fight other dragons, but it really is like based on those two characters being friends and opening each other up to one of them being a dragon and having like what everyone's kind of instinct of them is like they're terrifying and like ferocious, and it kind of is a weird dynamic where he's like best friends with this dragon, and he kind of learns that maybe he's not so bad, and the bounty hunter is supposed to be this like battle hardened kind of guy who really didn't take any nonsense. And I feel like his friendship with the dragon really kind of starts to open him up a little bit more to humanity. So I feel like even for myself, it kind of just reflects like the relationships that I do have, and like how people can really open you up to being different and changing you and making you, a better person.
Great. Thank you so much for that. We really need to be a better person and keep it going ahead. That's a great message. Thank you so much for that. Okay, please, can you tell me a little bit about your routine of writing? When you write, how you write, where you write? Do you write only when you are inspired, or you come to those blocked moment too, and they say, "Let me just write. Let me finish the project that I have started."
So I would have to say that, when I first started writing, it was definitely more of like oh, I'm inspired type of thing. But, I really do love the craft, and I would love to make something of it where, I can do it all the time. And I think that I've kind of learned to discipline myself a little bit to kind of push through those blocks if I can, where, I'll sit down at my computer every morning and just try to write. you know, I feel like when I first started writing, it was like, all right, let's get out 250 words. And then it kind of turned to like, all right, 500. And now I kind of sit down and write, and like, I really do sit down and write every single day. And it's not like it was a chore kind of for me of like you said, oh, I was inspired. Now it's more like, you know, it's just something that like I really do get joy out of. So I feel like, my 250 words, my 500 words has kind of turned into like, oh, wow, I actually wrote like a 1,500 words today, or, oh, I wrote, 3 chapters or whatever it is, so it did kind of change. And like, I feel like quarantine kind of helped that.
Great. And how you go about editing and marketing and all that kind of stuff after writing?
So right now I am not really sure how I'm going about editing. I'll be honest. I mean, I had one of my friends writes, and he actually suggested somebody to edit my first short story. And I liked what happened, but I had some, disagreements with them on what they wanted to do with my story. And I took some of their suggestions and others, but I actually, for the second one, I had someone else edit it, and I feel like it was just more authentically me. I mean, not that the first one wasn't, because the changes that were suggested that I didn't like, I didn't keep. But I even right now I'm actually writing a novel that I hope to release at one point, and I know that I'm on my first draft, and I'll probably go over it a second time. And like usually I'll go through my own drafts about 2 or 3 times just to kind of see what I can add, what I can, what more could there be, or if something needs to be explained better. and then I will try to hire somebody to edit it for me. As for marketing, I mean, right now, all I really have is a Facebook and an Instagram page that I write that have all my stuff on it.
Great. Thank you so much. As you say, you have a great project that you are going to write a novel to, and you will write it for 3 times. You know that Hemingway was the winner of the World Prize in the 50s, and one of his best declaration about his best masterpiece, he told the media that he used to, and the literary critics, that he used to write 8 sentences 20 times.
That's how he wrote?
Yeah.
8 sentences 20 times. That was his writing routine?
Yeah, I say that make it really solid literary masterpiece.
Wow.
You will revise each sentences 20 times. You say the first one is nothing, the second, third, nothing. The 20th rewriting of each sentences could be validated. Then it will go to the next.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's some attention to detail, definitely. And I mean, I wish I had the time for that.
You will have it ahead. You are too young and you will make it. You will make it. I'm sure. I believe you. You have gone through a lot of things which is more difficult than this. Then you can, and you will.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And right now, let's talk about your educational personality. How do you decide to be an educator and take care of kids despite all this painful past?
I really don't know how I decided it.
That's great.
My mom was a teacher, and I know that she would
families of educators, so like father, like mother, like son.
I don't want to give her too much credit.
Oh, really?
And it's not about it like that, but
no, it's about you. Tonight's about you. You are the show.
But she's an educator, and I would like to say that she inspired me, but I would kind of be lying a little bit if I said that. Just I think I've always had a connection with kids, even when I was a kid or younger myself. Like I would always kind of hang out with the kids at the parties and stuff like that, and I really kind of got them in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. So as I kind of struggled a little bit through my first couple years of college, and I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do, and I had originally gone for education actually. Then I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And I took a couple years off, and then I was kind of thinking oh, okay, something had actually opened up, and I worked at an after school program where I worked with kids, and really that kind of didn't necessarily spark it right away, but people that I worked with were like, wow, you're good at this. You should do this for a living. And for a while I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know. And then it kind of was just it makes sense. For me, it is something I did enjoy. Even when I was with the kids at the after school program, it was a great part of my day, even though it was 3 hours a day where you get to kind of sit around and you talk to kids about what they're doing. And even for myself, I like to write fantasy, and even before I was writing, it was oh, we talk about comic books or TV shows and stuff like that. And I was talking to these elementary school kids about the stuff that I liked, and we kind of had that bond. So I feel that was kind of the start of it. And then so now I work at a school. I'm a paraprofessional, and I work with autistic kids. And it's a pretty rewarding job. I know that my days are pretty difficult usually. They have some stuff going on that, it's hard to get through every day. But with the help of me and our teams that are there and even in classrooms and stuff like that, I hope that we do actually, bring them a little bit, make them a little bit better every day and make them a little smarter and give them, something to look forward to when they come to school, a good environment to be educated in.
Great. Thank you so much for that great educational notes there. Mr. Daniel, what is your last message that you want to share with the world, please?
I don't know, I mean, it's just, whatever your story is or whatever, you could share it, you cannot, but I promise that most of the time when you share your story, whether it's writing or it has nothing to do with writing, it's definitely worth sharing to the world, just to inspire one person to maybe feel like they can kind of get out of whatever situation that they think is terrible maybe they can get out of that situation if they hear somebody else had success in it.
Thank you so much for that inspiring notes over there. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Daniel Carsten from New York, for sharing your story tonight.